Hello everyone. There's not going to be much to look at during this video because I just wanted to discuss skirmish rules, and I don't have much to show you, so I thought I would point the camera at this table setup that I've got here. Some of you may recall that I played a whole series of Western skirmish games recently, and I've still got the table set up, and that's because I'm waiting on the release of What a Cowboy by Two Fat Lardies to give that a try as well, and hoping that it will come out soon, but I'm probably going to have to clear this away to make way for another game in the not too distant future, so may have to give up on my wait. But yeah, that's basically the reason why I wanted to have this discussion with you, although I'm afraid I'm maintaining my current policy of disabling comments on my videos, so you won't be able to comment on this or my thoughts, so it's a bit of a one-way conversation, I'm afraid. But yeah, I'm waiting on What a Cowboy, but I'm also waiting on a set of rules by Firelock Games called Blood and Steel, and I've just been listening to YouTube while painting wargames figures and listening to a few reviews of the rules. I haven't actually come across any bat reps for it yet, not that I've searched that hard. And what the difference between What a Cowboy and Blood and Steel is that What a Cowboy isn't published yet, whereas Blood and Steel is, but it's kind of on back order now with most UK retailers. If I purchased it direct from the US, no doubt I could pick up a copy relatively quickly, but my order from a UK retailer is about 6 weeks old now, and it doesn't look like it's going to be arriving anytime soon, so having to wait for both those sets of rules for different reasons. But ironically, I've got a feeling that I'm going to enjoy What a Cowboy, even though I don't really enjoy many Two Fat Lardies games in particular, and I know I'm going against the run of opinion here, is I don't like Sharp Practice, or rather, to give it its correct title, Sharp Practice 2. Most people, when they talk about Sharp Practice 2, tell you they're playing Sharp Practice. They're not. Sharp Practice was revived, not revived, well, it was revived and revised, and it's actually, it should be properly termed Sharp Practice 2. I'm not going to go into many of the reasons why I dislike Sharp Practice 2, but worryingly for me, Blood and Steel, the reviews I've seen of Blood and Steel, people often compare it to Sharp Practice 2, and I have a suspicion that I'm not going to like Blood and Steel, which again goes against the sort of run of, the current opinion really that the reviewers have given, that it's a good set of rules. So I wanted to kind of talk about why that is. Why do I have such a drastically different opinion of rules than the majority of people? What it comes down to is that a lot of war games rules aren't developed to produce necessarily an accurate depiction of a period or even of a true skirmish. Now, what I mean by that is that a lot of rules are developed to cater for the consumer, and the consumer in this case, or the average kind of wargamer, is someone who hasn't been wargaming a particularly long time, 5 to 10 years maybe, which as you get older isn't particularly good, a long time in wargaming terms, but it is the sort of average sort of period that people have been hobbying for. And in that time, they haven't really built up vast armies, but they do have kind of reasonable sized collections of figures. But those figures are inadequate to stage a really large game. So if you take something like the Napoleonic period, most people don't have figures, to play a game of the size of something like Waterloo or Borodino, but it's everyone's aim and ambition and pipe dream to do that one day. So the kind of rules that they gravitate to are rules that give them a sort of pretense of playing games on that battles of that scale, whilst recognising that the number of figures on the table that they've actually got only represent a kind of skirmish level game. But it's not actually a true skirmish game, and this is what I mean about it not being accurate. In a true skirmish game, you're never going to get anything other than a very kind of homogeneous collection of troop types. So what Blood and Steel seems to be doing, it described on the Firelock Games website, so this isn't something that's been an interpretation of their intention. This is actually their stated intention. Firelock Games say that their rules are skirmish level and intended to portray, I'm paraphrasing this because I haven't got the text directly in front of me, but it's intended to portray the type of conflicts that took place on the fringes of larger battles. Now, if you're that typical wargamer who's got, a sort of about sort of 50 or 60 figures for a particular army, and there's a mix of troop types in that collection, so you've got some cavalry, you might have an artillery piece, and you've got a few units, if you can call them that in inverted commas, of figures, then you're going to leap at that proposition and think, Blood and Steel is the game for me, the set of rules for me. And that's absolutely understandable, I do get that, but my nature is really to, in lots of walks of life, in lots of different areas, is to go against the sort of crowd. And yes, I can see that rules like Blood and Steel and Sharp Practice 2 are capable of producing a fun game, but there's something to me very unsatisfactory about it, and that is because it never happened that you got conflicts taking place where there were little units of 8 figures, representing grenadiers, and another 8 figures representing dragoons, and another 8 figures representing you know what I'm saying, some voltigeurs or whatever, all mixed up together. What you would have had in a conflict on the edge on the fringes of a battle would have been something like skirmishers bumping up against one another, and having a sort of fight, on the very fringes of a battle. You wouldn't have got sort of a unit of cavalry kind of detaching itself from the main battle and going over to the fringe to help out, with an artillery piece and that kind of thing. It wouldn't happen like that, and that's one of the reasons why I like so much Western skirmish games, because it's a one-to-one figure scale, and these type of skirmishes did happen. You have kind of different troop types, in that you will have outlaws versus the marshal's posse or something like that, but effectively all the figures are the same. They've got slightly different weaponry maybe, but they're not totally different troop types. Some of them aren't armoured, and some of them aren't trained to be light troops, what have you. It's homogeneous. It's what you can call homogeneous, and to me that is an essential aspect of skirmish rules, that they shouldn't really allow for that diversity of troop types all to kind of mix in the same game on the same tabletop, and that's one of the reasons why I'm not keen on Sharp Practice 2. There are a lot of other reasons, but I'm not making this video to knock Sharp Practice 2. But it does appear to be a characteristic of Blood and Steel. Now the other thing that I'm finding a little bit kind of baffling about Blood and Steel, and I think I'm going to find very unsatisfactory, is that it describes itself as rules dealing with conflicts during the reign of Queen Victoria, and I simply don't understand why they describe it in that way. On the rulebook cover they actually give the dates as 1837 to 1901, so precisely during the reign of Queen Victoria, and yet some of the conflicts that they've actually got scenarios for in the rulebook don't involve armies that served Queen Victoria. So you've got things like the Franco-Prussian War, you've got the Mexican-American War, all wars that happened during the reign of Queen Victoria, but absolutely nothing to do with Queen Victoria. So why choose those dates as the parameters of your rules? Doesn't make sense at all, because warfare didn't change when Queen Victoria came to the throne, and didn't change when she died. So the only thing that we associate really with the age of Victoria in terms of warfare is really to do with battles for empire, and in particular the battles of the British Empire. There was also the Crimean War, so that could be more accurately described as a Victorian war, because the British Army fought during the Crimean War. But in the main, it's colonial conflicts, it's the Indian Mutiny, the Anglo-Zulu War, the Boer War, the Northwest Frontier, all those kind of things. And that brings me to my other kind of misgiving about Blood and Steel, is that colonial warfare and warfare, say in Europe on the scale of the Franco-Prussian War, or in America on the scale of the American Civil War, were fought in entirely different ways. So yes, there would have been fights, fights that took place that involved a relatively small number of people, and therefore you could reproduce that on the tabletop with a relatively small number of figures, but the type of fight that took place would be very different indeed. Except some of you probably observing by looking at this tabletop is that these Wild West fights took place smack bang in the middle of the period that when Queen Victoria was on the throne. So that these, in theory, these Western rules, in theory, could fall under the the umbrella of the Blood and Steel rules, and yet they don't appear to be what Blood and Steel is trying to create. The type of game that Blood and Steel is trying to create. Blood and Steel are trying to create a game where those people, who represent the majority of wargamers, can put all their toys on the table and play with them and have a fun game. And I'm not opposed to that. I'm just saying that it's not the sort of game that I'm looking for. So that is really how I feel about skirmish games, I think, and why, even though I haven't got hold of either What's a Cowboy or Blood and Steel yet, I'm looking forward to getting one of them, and I think I'm going to have grave doubts about the other. Yeah, that's it. That's all I wanted to say, really. Just wanted to get my thoughts out there while they were still fresh in my mind. And thanks very much for listening to that. Bye for now.